This week's quiz does cover Chapter 9, which does cover corrections and community corrections, which we normally would cover next week. However, because all of faculty is furloughed, there's not going to be any classes, which is kind of a first. On Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, there will be no classes next week. So because we're not covering that, I've decided to go ahead and cover it today because I think it's so important to go in and talk about rehabilitation and what an important part as far as a key part of corrections it is. So I want to make sure that we definitely cover it. I have opened that part of the PowerPoint on Moodle. So we're going to go ahead and start covering that unless anybody has any questions before we get started about anything. All right, as usual, if
Wait,
you do.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
After next week, are we still doing video classes? Because a lot of people aren't.
Yeah, so next week there'll be nothing. We'll go quiet, silent for the holiday, and then it'll be week 10, which will be our final week. So we will have classes that week on Tuesday and Thursday, our normal classes. I will record those as well. We'll do a review for the final. I'm not sure if we'll do it on Tuesday and Thursday. I'll let you know. I'll send out an announcement and let you know. And then I've already kind of reviewed earlier. I think we reviewed on Tuesday when the final is. It's also listed on Moodle. It's been listed since the day of. It's kind of a unique timing. So again, make sure you set your calendars when the final is. Go look on Moodle because it's not the normal assignment day for final because I have to have grading in. So set your calendars to when the final exam is. Again, it's on Moodle. But it's a different kind of time frame. In fact, I will tell you right now, hold on, and I will tell you when it is. But again, you can check. It opens Sunday, December 6th at 10 a.m. and it closes Thursday, December 9th at 3:20. So it's different. If you're watching this recording, it is different for the online folks because I teach this, or no, it's the same for the online folks, sorry. So it's the exact same for the online folks. So please, if you get confused because you didn't check it or never looked at it or didn't listen to a recording, and you think that it closes on Sunday and you don't take the final, don't email me and say, can I get an exception? Because you can't, because I have to have grading in. So there's just no exception to that. I've brought it up now at least 3 or 4 times. It's like I said, it's been on Moodle since the very beginning of classes. I've covered it a number of times. So make sure you tell yourself, make sure that you put it on your calendars. I will cover it again in week 10. I'll remind you again. So do not forget to do that. We will cover it next week again and go over some things so that you're prepared and that you study for it. All right, any other questions? Okay, if you want to follow along, you can. Like I said, the PowerPoint is on Moodle, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that way you'll know what I'm talking about. All right, so community corrections. This is like so huge to me because I really feel that as human beings, we all have different backgrounds and we all make mistakes and for different reasons. And one huge part of if we do end up making a mistake and we go and we hit that American criminal justice system and we are stopped by the police and we do go to the courts and we do end up in the correctional system, no matter what level of the correctional system, the rehab portion is there for a reason to assist us somehow or some way, and it should be defined for each specific person to fit our needs. And so it's really important that it's there to fit our needs because everybody's different. We all are raised differently. We come from different backgrounds. We all have different needs. And so it's really important that we really try to tailor fit the needs of that person with what that person has gone through, and whether it be the mental needs of that person, or if they have specific needs because of they have a drug habit. Whatever the needs may be, we want to try to fit those needs. And that's why when we earlier talked about on Tuesday through parole and probation, that they look at the person as a client. It's a client, and that person needs assistance, and corrections is so important. All right, so you learn through the court that there's a pretrial release. So when somebody's in corrections and their case was settled, they're let out on bail, or they're let out on their own recognizance. And what the court is basically saying or doing is they're saying, hey, we're hoping that you have ties to family, you have ties to employment, that we want you to come back to court because you have ties to something, and you've put some money down, and that we want you to come back so that we can find a way to keep you out of jail or to keep you out of prison and to get you into some rehabilitation, because the main goal should be to keep you from committing whatever crime was committed. So I kind of used myself as an example when I said that I was using drugs and I was committing crimes. The goal is to keep me from going down that path. So if somebody is out on pretrial release, the goal is to get me to go to court and to stop me from doing that behavior. So this is kind of where we start looking at that process. Oops, sorry. All right, so now if somebody's out on bail while we're looking at that person and trying to determine, okay, how are we going to keep them out of jail? What rehab program are we going to get them in, and how are we going to keep them from committing a crime again? There's some consequences to if they don't go back to court. So, because the goal, like I said, is to keep them from recidivating, from doing the crime again. But we also don't want to put them in jail. So offenders that are detained prior to trial are more likely to receive harsher sentences. So that's why we like people to get out on bail, because we like people to go back to their jobs, to go home to their family. However, it has significant impact for people of color, because people of color, we have found, can't make bail. And therefore, we have found that people of color receive harsher sentences compared to those that get out on bond. So, and we also find that men are more likely to be detained at pretrial stages than women are. And we also find that the offense that people commit play a role, as women who are charged with drug or property crimes are less likely to be detained prior to trial. So we have some issues going on right now in the court. So when you hear people talking about we need some criminal justice reform, this is what they're talking about. We've got some issues here. We know that the mainstay is right, that hey, we don't want to put people in jail or prison. If we can get them rehab, that's the main goal. However, these are some problems we have. So this is why we need some criminal justice reform. All right. So now that we know some criminal justice reform, and I've already told you guys, hey, we need to make some changes. We've also know that we've got some pretrial release programs out there. And so let's look at those. So the offender, if we have the offender that's been arrested, and that offender is denied bail because the crime that they committed is bad, and the court says, hey, we don't trust you out there because of the crime you committed, or the person is financially unable to make bail. So let me give you an example of those. So one person, maybe it's an active shooter situation where somebody was out there and they went to a school and they were actively shooting something. The judge may say, hey, I'm not going to give you bail because I don't trust that you're going to go do something like that again. Okay, so that could be an example where somebody's denied bail. Or you could just have somebody that doesn't have a house, or they just don't make enough money, and they just aren't able to make bail, and that's not fair. So, that's why people are saying, our criminal justice system isn't fair, because some people just can't make bail. They can't even come up with 10% of the bond, whatever the bond is. So when you commit a crime, they set bonds to different crimes. And if you get a bail bondsman, they'll say, okay, you have to come up with 10%. And some people will have a car, or they'll own a house, and they'll take those titles and take loans out on them. But some people don't own anything. And they live paycheck to paycheck. So how are you going to come up with that money? So those people that either get denied bail or just don't have the money to make bail must remain in custody until their case is resolved. And think about it. Think if you're employed and you're working paycheck to paycheck. You just got a job 3 months ago. That's gonna, if you're in jail, what is your employer going to think? Especially if you just got hired 3 months ago, you're probably going to lose your job. Let's say if you have kids at home and you're living paycheck to paycheck, you might lose your house. Length of the pretrial detention is also related to recidivism. So if you're in jail, can't you see how people just start to get really depressed? Like, I can't win for lose. I'm trying to do good, but now I just lost my job. I can't make bail. I'm stuck in jail. So you can start to see how it becomes this revolving door of people just don't know what to do. They just feel like, hey, nobody's helping me out. So we have what we call these PreTrial Release programs, where they save a significant amount of money to jurisdictions because they help offenders maintain ties to the community. Bail is used in many cases. And we also have the Bail Reform Act of 1984, where defendants should be released unless they have a risk of failure to appear. So unless a defendant basically just, hey, they were released and they didn't have to pay bail and they just never showed up, and they did it a number of times, we said, hey, you don't have to pay bail, because we know, just like I said at the top, we know that, hey, when we didn't give them bail, we didn't give people bail, that it had a lot of negative impact. It caused that revolving door. It caused people to actually commit more crimes. We knew that a lot of bad things happened. So guess what? We started making changes in our criminal justice system. So it's amazing how we saw bad things happen and we started creating pretrial release programs, and we did the Bail Reform Act of 1984. So that's what happens when we start seeing things go wrong, is we start doing criminal justice reform. All right, we also have what we call diversion, and that's where we refer offenders to a program instead of processing them through the system. So that's where, again, that's our main goal. If you have someone that comes in and the court sees them and they go, hey, would this person be better served in jail or prison, or would this person be better served in a diversion program? Because again, our goal is we want active people that are working and successful in society. We don't want them in our prisons and jails. So the most common type of the diversion program is used with first-time low-level juvenile offenders. So that's why you'll so often see juveniles get warnings, is because we want them in diversion programs. We want them learning. We want them saying, hey, you make mistakes, you're young, you're juveniles, that's what you're supposed to do. So we want to teach you through anger management classes, through substance abuse education, through service through the community, that, hey, these cases, if you go through these classes and you start learning through diversion, these cases can be dismissed, and you can learn that there's other ways of doing things. And we've learned that there's four primary benefits to those. One is it helps reduce the number of cases that are formally processed by the criminal justice system. And that actually saves money. It saves money because we don't have to process them, and we're saving somebody. We're teaching them a better way. Number two, it provides skills that aid in the rehabilitation of the offender. So maybe that juvenile wasn't given those skills for whatever reason. And so we're giving that juvenile offender those skills. Number three, we're able to avoid the stigma associated with a criminal conviction, so that juvenile doesn't have that conviction on their record, which is huge. And again, 4 and 1 are kind of tied together because there's a cost benefit, again, because it's less expensive to administer. However, just like with everything, whenever there's a positive, there's a negative. So with diversion, there is some evidence that the diversion programs can be more successful than traditional court interventions, but there is some negative consequences, which the presence of diversion programs can lead to net widening, which can bring cases within the reach of a system that historically were not targeted. And there's little evidence that demonstrates that diversion programs serve as an effective deterrent and help prevent recidivism. All right, so there's lots of juvenile programs. That's what I like about what's happened, especially with the correctional programs, is we have lots of things out there for juveniles, because there's a lot of popular types of programs for juveniles, because we realize that sometimes we haven't provided all the right skills for adults, and some adults are having children and they just don't have the time. They're working for a multitude of reasons. Juveniles haven't been given all the tools in their toolbox that they need to make all the right life decisions. So there's a lot of diversion programs out there for them. And right now there's several different types of programs used, and we're going to look at 5 different types. One is what we call case management programs. So this is where, and this is really seen, especially if any of you are interested in going in to be a juvenile parole or probation. So if you're interested in working at the Juvenile Community Justice Center, this is what you'd be doing. Doing case management programs where you supervise at various different levels. The second type is individual treatment. So it's more focusing on providing counseling. Then we have number 3, family-based treatment, which is a therapeutic approach and can include parents and siblings. The 4th type is youth court programs, where it uses peers from the community to sentence offenders for low-level acts of delinquency. And finally, we have restorative justice, which is really taken off lately, where it's using a victim community-centered approach. And all 5 of these are utilized. It just depends on the juvenile and what's going on. Not all are perfect, and they all, again, can be utilized depending on what is going on. All right, I'm just checking the chat. I've got some different people waiting to get in. Okay, so pay attention to these next 2 courts, because we're going to talk about these in a minute. So another way that we've really tried to streamline our correctional facilities through our courts have been to specialize our courts. And 2 different courts that we've specialized have been through mental health courts and drug courts. So let's first talk about the mental health courts. So mental health courts are a popular option for mentally ill offenders. All right, so if you have, let's say somebody is in Target and they walk in and they steal some clothing, and they go into the section where there's some chips and they're stealing some food. And loss prevention, that's kind of like people that look for people that are stealing stuff inside Target, kind of notice that the person probably has some mental health some concerns, you know. So they call the police, and the police get there and they're like, I think there's some mental health concerns. So this person goes to a mental health court, and this person, again, needs somebody that's a professional that's specifically assigned to a courtroom to develop a specialized knowledge base about the needs of that individual, so that they can provide treatment for that offender, so that they can look at what's the best way we can help that person, because you can't look at that person and give them and just say, oh, we're going to send them to jail, because this person has different needs, and it's not even the same needs as somebody else with a mental health problem, because mental health issues are very different. It's a broad spectrum depending on what type of mental health issues that person has. So it's a very specialized court. We also have drug courts. And again, they provide specialized resources to this category of offenders, and they target specific offenders. It's a supportive environment that's geared towards rehabilitation and reform. Okay, so again, it's targeted. The goal is not, if we stop somebody, again, in Target, and somebody's stealing food and clothing, same type of thing, and they're under the influence, please come out and stop them, and they're under the influence of, let's say, heroin, and they end up in drug court because the officer says they were under the influence of heroin, and it's a DRE specialist, because you ask, how did the officer know they were under the influence of heroin? Well, a DRE, a drug recognition expert, this is what a expert trained officer, this is somebody that actually goes through training, and they can actually tell through looking at them, taking their blood pressure, interviewing them, looking at their eyes, doing all these different things, and can actually limit it down to tell you what different type of drugs that they're under the influence of. And so they say that, and so if that person goes to court, they're going to go to a drug court so that we get them that specialized help. So instead of just sending them away, again, the goal is rehabilitation. We want to help you. We want to say, hey, if you're under the influence of this drug, we think that probably had a reason that you might have been in Target stealing food or clothes. Maybe you don't have a job, maybe you do, but that's the goal for rehabilitation. So that is going to be the end goal. So it's kind of cool when you think about it, and that's how it's supposed to work. I'm not saying it always does work that way, but that is the goal, is to get everybody in the right court so that we specialize the rehabilitation of the person for what they did and the reason that they did that. And also the goal has to be that the person is telling us the truth. So we don't want people lying to us. And a lot of times people think that, oh, if they lie, they're going to get off easier. That's not true. The goal is to tell us the truth so that we can get you the help and the rehabilitation and direct you to the right place. All right. So we're kind of focusing back on probation. Actually, I'm going to stop here really fast because I want to do something. Okay. So any questions right now on mental health courts or drug courts? Okay, so what we're going to do right now is, I'm just wondering how I'm going to split you guys up. Okay, so if you get I'm going to tell you, well, I'm not going to tell you which room right now. So we're going to go off into rooms. I'm going to give you cases. If you get, there's two cases. One's going to be the mental health person that went into Target that has a mental health issue, that went into Target and stole the chips, the food, and the clothing. The next case is going to be the person that was under the influence of heroin that went into the Target and stole the chips and the clothing. So you're going to get either one. I'll tell you which one in a minute when you go into your groups. So I want you guys to, and once you go into your groups, I want you guys to talk, and without having a whole lot of background, I just want to see where you come up. If you were in over the judge, over those courts, I want you to tell me what you would do for treatment. What would be your answer for rehabilitation if you saw the people that stole those things either had a mental health issue or had a, they were addicted to heroin drug issue, and they'd gone to Target and stole those things and they were arrested. Now, depending on your room number, if you have an odd room number, meaning room 1, room 3, room 5, you're going to have the mental health issue. And if you have an even room number, meaning room 2, room 4, or room 6, you're going to have the person that was arrested that's under the influence of heroin or has the drug issue. All right, so any questions? Okay, I think you guys get it. Okay, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to discuss. You can do some research if you want on, in fact, I kind of want you to, what kind of rehabilitation is out there, okay? All right, so I'm going to give you actually 6 rooms. All right, go ahead and have fun. Okay. Let's go with, let's go a little backwards. Let's go with Monica with the drug addict with room 6. What'd you guys decide?
Okay. Well, we were kind of discussing it on the basis that this person was kind of their first offense. Obviously, if this was a repeat offense, then they would be tried a little more harshly and probably not thrown into these programs. But if this was this person's first, maybe second offense of something small like this, like shoplifting, we would want to send them to specialized courts, specifically for drug courts. And we weren't sure if the mental health courts and the drug courts are completely separate things, or if there was some way to do kind of a combination of the two. But if that was an option, then we kind of wanted to go down that path, since mental health and drug abuse tends to go kind of hand in hand. And then we would think to send them through some sort of diversion program to do what was it, substance abuse education programs, and get them through there for their first offense.
Okay, good. And yeah, you're right. You guys hit on it. Very often drugs and mental health issues do go together very, very, very often. So, and we'll hit something in a minute with that. So good job. Good job. Okay, let's hit mental health. So why don't we go with Bailey? Why don't you cover what your room 3 said about the mental health arrest and what your group was going to say with that?
We talked about, wait, did we get it wrong, group?
Were you guys 3?
Because we talked about,
Yeah, we were in 3, but we talked about drugs because
yeah.
Okay, go ahead and cover drugs.
Okay, cool. So what we talked about was I mean, basically what the last group said, but also on top of that, like, you know, sending them not to jail necessarily, because there's a lot of people that are currently in jail for drug crimes that, you know, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So we were talking about sending them to a rehab facility, and as well as getting in contact with, sorry, I have it on a website right here because I found this, because all I really know is like about sending people to rehab for drug crimes and stuff, but there's also like meeting with a probation officer like often and doing random drug screenings that could really like keep them on top of things, and also finding counseling for the family of the offender. I think that's also really important because yeah, they could, yeah.
Let me ask you guys this. Everybody answer this in your chat. If you had to guess, out of every 10 people in a rehab facility, how many in a drug rehab facility, how many are there, do you think, because a drug court or some court mandated them to be there? If you had to guess, out of every 10 people in a facility, or out of 100, okay, we'll do 100 or 10, 4, 10. So let me see. I'm waiting for everybody to put. So we've got 3 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 4 out of 10, 6 out of 10. Okay, so gosh, we're all over the place. So for those of you that said anything below 5, the rest of them, so the 7, anything below 5, the rest of them are just walked in there on their own? How'd they get there then? How did they get to that drug treatment program? If they're not court appointed, If they're not at that drug treatment, okay, you guys, if they're not at that drug treatment program by a court appointed, by like a drug court, where a drug court, so let me make sure I'm saying this as I should, understand. So I get arrested. I'm using the example I used Tuesday. So I used heroin. I have a heroin problem. I lost my job. I can't afford to buy the heroin. So I break into a house. I steal a TV. I go pawn it to buy some more heroin. I get arrested. I go to court. A DRE officer comes out. They realize they do a good job. They do what they're supposed to do. I go to a drug court. They realize, Tiffany, you have a heroin problem. So they send me to drug rehab. Okay. So I'm one of the 10 that's there because I'm mandated by court to go to this drug rehab program, because they don't want to send me to jail. They want to help me, right? They want to rehab me, right? They want to get me back working. They want to get me off the heroin. So again, I'm going to so did that make sense when I asked that question? I'm at that drug rehab program because I was mandated by court to go. Yeah, Monica, go ahead.
Just a quick clarification is, if you were ordered because of a family law situation, would that also fall under the same umbrella as court ordered?
Yeah, court ordered. So that's court ordered. So let me re-ask it, because maybe I didn't ask it right. Yeah, Rylan. Yeah.
Basically, well, I kind of have the answer for the question, because the thing is, most of the time, yes, I feel like 85% of the people that go into a rehab center usually are court ordered because of some crime they committed, domestic abuse, et cetera, abuse of drugs, having it, but also at the same time, from the other side, for the other however much percent other than the 85%, the other percent usually is either it's usually either family sending their kids to rehab, to get off of, whatever drugs they got into in high school, et cetera. It's either families sending them to rehab, because a lot of times, a lot of people, because I'm a psych major, so a lot of people, they don't like taking treatment, but it has to be their idea. Either they can be forced into treatment, or they can't be, or they will not, because most of the time they
can't be forced, right? That's what you meant to say. They can't be.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's kind of a thing. It's a thing, because it's like, when people are backed into a corner, I've noticed with people in general, when they're backed into a corner, you have to do this, go to rehab, get better, they will back out immediately. Like my older brother, he just got released from a psych ward, and he will not take his medication for bipolar and schizophrenia. And he's gone in and out of psych wards and he's been homeless for the past 10 years. And he will not take the medication because he likes smoking marijuana. And he prefers smoking marijuana over taking the meds that keep him from basically losing his shit. But we have all these people telling him, my family telling him, dude, you need to take medication, you need to get better, or you need to be stabilized, mentally, chemical and balance wise, or you're going to be doing stupid things, or you're going to be back in the same place. But he will not listen. He's been on the streets, like I said, 10 years, and nothing has changed. People have to get because the way people work, it has to be their idea. So no, you can't force people to go into rehab unless you're a minor. But usually people have to get the idea on their own, quote unquote. So it's 85% of it, I would think, would be court mandated. The other percent is either family intervention, or something so, excuse my language, fucked up happens. Basically, you realize, oh, this is an actual problem.
No, yeah, you're right. You're right on it. And actually, you brought up kind of two different things that I'm talking about. So one is change. Has anybody ever tried to change? It's hard. It's hard. And when you want to change, it's hard. And that's when you want to. When you want to, it's hard. So, and that's kind of what rehabilitation is all about, is changing behavior. It's changing a drug habit. It's changing a behavior. So that's kind of two different things that you brought up, Rylan, that I'm talking about. One is, you know, who's going to drug rehabilitation treatment? Who's going there? Are you going there? You know, I had a nephew for 10 years. He started when he was 13. My sister found heroin needles underneath his mattress. And you know, we didn't have, it was, oh, I could go into stories. I'm not going to go into it, but, you know, it was really sad. And we offered treatment. But again, I know, that's why I tell you, I know change. You can't force anybody in there. And he was arrested a number of times, and drug treatment, they told him, you have to go. And every time he went in there, guess what happened? He stayed for the days he was required to stay, and he checked out and nothing ever happened. It wasn't until after, I think it was about 12 years of being a heroin addict, that he finally said on his own, when he wanted to stop, I'm ready to stop.
I have a friend like that.
Yeah, so it's their decision that he had to make. And I'm not saying theirs, I'm just saying he had to make. You know, and I have my own perspective from being a police officer and seeing many on the street, those addicted to drugs. But I also have a family member that happened to. So, but anyway, but my point to you guys is, we're going back to, you know, drug courts is, again, that's how the system works right now. There's a lot of things surrounded with that. Is number one, is we have drug courts out there that are mandating you have to go to drug court, and they're paying for it. Okay. The problem is, kind of like Rylan said, and just like I said with my nephew, the person has to want to change to do it. That's the problem. We have to have that person want to change. If you don't have that, that's the problem. Next is, just like we said, what are the numbers? Okay. So if you have, Rylan, you brought up the other part is families telling someone you have to go. Well, right now in Oregon, what just happened in Oregon? What did we just vote to do? What happened in Oregon?
Decriminalize, like, all drugs.
Decriminalize. So right now, the drug court, it's going to change with the drug courts. Okay. So what's going to have to happen, and I hope this happens, and this is going to happen with all of you guys, because I'm the old one, you guys are the young ones, you guys are the new nonprofits, is we are going to have to get out there, because if we have people that are addicted to drugs that need help and they don't have insurance, okay, we are going to need nonprofits stepping up to pay for this treatment. Okay, does that make sense? Because right now right now it's decriminalized, so we're going to need these nonprofits stepping up to pay for this. So when somebody steps up and needs help, we need the money to step up to pay for this. So we're going to need a changing of the balance. So there's going to need some things that happens with that to assist people that are addicted to get off of that. Because not everybody, some people can say, hey, I can get off of it on my own. But some people need some assistance doing that. Some people can't do that on their own. They are not able to do that, or need some assistance with different types of programs to do that and to come off of it slowly, so that they have, or different types of programs like methadone programs or different things like that. So, and like I said, every human being is different. We can't just have one size fits all for everybody. So this is going to open the doors for different types of programs out there. So for those of you looking for jobs, this has just opened the doors for different types of programs out there. So there's going to be different types of programs out there that are going to need to be filled and going to change the ways. So that's a good thing. So just be aware that, and for those of you that are getting ready to graduate in the next couple of years, yahoo, different things out there for you guys to do to start helping those that are in need, because we're changing the way we're doing things, which is always a good thing. All right, so let's move on. All right, let's go to mental health. Rylan, group 5, mental health. What'd you guys say for our person arrested?
So I think we did the drug one too. I think we must have misunderstood. But the example that I actually happened, wait, give me 1 second. My roommates are about to walk in. Let me just yell at them to shut up.
That's okay. I'll choose someone else. Dumbe, how do you pronounce your name? I know I probably just totally massacred it.
It's do maybe. It's all good.
How do you pronounce it?
Like doing maybe together. Like
Doombe?
no, do maybe. Like
Maybe. Okay, say it
like,
again really slow because I'm having a hard time hearing you.
do maybe.
Do
Maybe.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. That is so cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, so basically we said like if the person's like clearly like mentally unstable and has like doesn't even know like just like completely gone, like far gone, like to the point where like they don't even know what they're doing at this point, I think they should get help first before any manual punishment by the government. We think like they wouldn't even be in this situation if they weren't clearly ill, and I don't think they'll be stealing if they weren't ill and stuff like that. So I think their help should come first, especially if like they want to get help too to be better. And maybe we can think of punishments after, but I really think the help should come first. So yeah.
Yep. All right, good. Okay, so let's see. Let's see maybe if some of the drugs did mental health. Okay, so Aldo, group 4, did you guys do drugs or mental health?
We actually did mental health, so we didn't do drugs.
Hey, okay. All right, so tell us.
Yeah, so basically we're just kind of going over like it depends like what kind of like mental disorder it is that they have. So depending on the severity of it, so like obviously we would like not want to punish them for like crime, like I don't know, we take a different approach. Like we were saying, like we need to send them to some sort of like psych rehab like first.
Yep.
Then determine like what their state of mind is. So yeah.
You guys are all so hitting on it. Are you guys starting to see how this is what a lot of cops are saying, which is why are law enforcement officers responding to these calls? You guys starting to see what I'm saying? We're saying, which is what we've been saying for a long time, which is because they're not that. It's just we're at a 911 call a cop, get a cop. It's kind of everything's in a basket, but you guys are so answering it perfectly, which is why are we answering someone addicted to drugs and somebody with a mental health issue with prison, or we're not. You guys are saying we need to answer it with some type of with help and rehabilitation, and I love it. You guys are answering correctly, and that's awesome. That's what I like to hear. Okay, so let's go with Sydney, group 2. What'd you guys do it on?
We did it on drugs.
Okay.
And we basically said, like, obviously, like, circumstances plays a lot into it, but based on the information that you gave us, and we basically said that they should go into, like, a 12-step program. They should not do it in jail or, like, in prison. They should do the program outside of that. And we said we looked at the possibility of, like, a 9-step, but we definitely think that the 12-step would be more, like, productive in the way of it, but definitely, like, there's a lot of circumstances that can go to it. Like if it was their second or third offense, like maybe they would go to jail, they would do the 12-step rehab while in jail, and then they would get out on early release and stuff like that. And like, obviously if the robbery was like armed, it would be a lot different. But based on what you gave us, we just think like a 12-step program outside of jail would be a good idea.
Good. All right. And then finally, let's go with Andrea, room 1.
Yeah, so we got mental health, and basically we said that we should definitely do rehabilitation because this would actually try to change the offender's behaviors instead of just locking them up and kind of saying, okay, now we're going to punish you. It actually would be really effective, we think, because in jail, like, it might make the offender really angry and not actually change their behavior. And we also said it would be a good idea for them to go on probation, because that way they can still have a home life and be in the community, but it's not like jail where they're completely locked up.
Yeah, All right, awesome. Okay, any questions on that? I think you guys did great. I gave you limited information because I wanted to see where you went, but you went exactly where I wanted you to go, which was awesome. Okay, so any questions before we kind of move on and breeze on through the rest of this PowerPoint? Okay. Okay, so probation. So there's history with it, and it goes back to basically the Middle Ages, where John Augustus said, "Hey, you know what? We need to stop just, incarcerating people, and we need to look at putting people on probation. And I'll be a probation officer." And he wanted to reform people, and so he kind of started it back in 1841. So this is, even though they didn't do a great job at it, it's been in the works for a while, and it's been kind of forming for a while. So does it work? Does probation work? Well, they say that about 13 to 23% of probations are revoked because people engage in new crime. And I think, there could be different reasons for that. Maybe because who knows? Maybe because somebody didn't do a good job at ensuring that the rehabilitation was done correctly. I mean, there could be all kinds of reasons. Not everyone is revoked for the same reason. Black probationers in some regions are more than twice as likely to be revoked than white or Hispanic probationers. Young probationers are more likely. Women are less likely. So all kinds of reasons for that. All right, and parole, that's where if you get sentenced for 25 years in prison, but you have really good behavior and they let you out in 10 years. That was developed in the 19th century. And again, it's been around for a while. So it's morphed into different things, and it needs to get better, and it needs to change. And I think it is definitely going to be a part of criminal justice reform that you guys are going to see in the future. Parole today does have different meanings. There is what we call parole boards, and they're the ones that determine if a person who has been sentenced by a jury or by a judge, whether or not somebody serves the sentence that they were given by a jury or a judge, or whether or not they let them off early. And then we talked a little bit about the prisoner reentry back into society. That's a big thing. And can you imagine getting sentenced to 25 years, living 25 years? I mean, some of you aren't even 25 years old, and having in prison in a cell and having to re-enter society, it can be really traumatic. And so we really have to look at what are we doing to help people that have lived in prison re-enter society and ensuring they're successful. It's a huge thing, and it's a huge thing that is our responsibility to ensure that they are successful. There's employment challenges that really is on us to ensure that people that are re-entering society that have been in prison have the right education. President Obama announced the new policy on Ban the Box that said, hey, we can't say that they have to check that box anymore, because we were finding that they weren't able, if you served in prison and you came out, you had to check a box and you weren't able to get a job. Or if you were able to get a job, it wasn't anything that you could support yourself with. So we are making changes, and we realize that. There's also, we're looking at drug addiction. One of the primary reasons offenders are involved in criminal activity and sent to prison was an issue of drug addiction. Many offenders will return to addiction and the lifestyles due to drug addiction. So we've got to look at drug addiction as a serious problem, and we've got to move forward of how we can treat this and what we can do about it. We also got to look at healthcare, folks. There's limited access to physical and mental health care. People have a problem and an inability to pay it, lack of knowledge about where to go to get assistance. It can impede an ex-offender's successful re-entry into the system, into life outside of prison. Also, those with any mental illness, psychotropic medications just to keep their mental health going normally. So we've got to make that availability there for them so that they can lead a normal life. It's huge. And also access just to resources, the availability to resources. They can't be denied just normal resources because of a criminal record or a felony drug related record. So we have to make sure that they have the access to resources if they have been in prison and they get out. This is all around that bubble of criminal justice reform. All right. Any questions on chapter 9 and why this is so important? I hope you can kind of see the level of why it's important and what the need of continually reforming it is, because we're constantly changing and our laws are constantly changing and our communities are constantly changing, and therefore that's why reform is constantly needed. All right, you guys want to do a quick review?